Hi everyone, Obla here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Sun Kil Moon record, This Is My Dinner. This is the newest full-length album from singer-songwriter Mark Kozelek's Sun Kil Moon. Mark is an Ohio native who has been in the industry for years now, and the third and current act of his career has been one of the most interesting artistic trajectories of any songwriter out there. Patient and contemplative music have always been a part of Mark's repertoire, going back to his days fronting slowcore gods, the Red House Painters. And he's still a pretty thoughtful guy now, but his songwriting style has become radically different over the years. Recently, I'd say it's been evolving faster and faster, thanks in part to a very prolific release schedule, the overwhelming age of information that we live in, as well as Mark's very unfiltered lyrical style. A lot of this can be traced back to a handful of records that came out in the first part of this decade. Perils from the Sea, Among the Leaves, and Mark's most popular album in years, Benji. Also an influential factor in this evolution, I think, was the beef that Mark found himself embroiled in after some offhand stage banter that basically put him in a sensationalized beef with the band The War on Drugs. Mark also did not hesitate to put himself at odds with both music fans and journalists as he trolled them mercilessly, with both crude lyrics and commentary. A lot of this drama culminated into a one-off tune named after the stage banter that got Mark in trouble in the first place. Recording a 7-minute diatribe about a mostly made-up conflict that would have evaporated in a week had you ignored it. For some songwriters, that might seem a little too specific, a little too niche, but an extreme focus on minutia has become a key feature of Mark's music ever since, whether that be in his solo stuff or his Sun Kil Moon stuff, the various collaborations he's explored for the past few years, like with Sean Yeaton, as well as Justin Broderick, just to name a few. Now, going into this new LP, I was not sure if Mark could get even more meta given his last album. It was a solo record that he put out just earlier this year. The album featured a series of very serene, semi-ambient guitar backing tracks, with Mark waxing poetic for 7 to 10 minutes at a time about his hometown, his past, boxing, interactions with various people, and even lawn maintenance. I don't mean to oversimplify Mark's approach to songwriting in this era of his career, but the simplicity of it is part of its beauty. The rawness of it, how in the moment it feels, and how unedited Mark is when it comes to the details he surrenders in his lyrics or the topics that he chooses to approach. On top of it, none of this would be as compelling as it actually is if Mark was not a talented storyteller. Because I can't really name any other songwriters who I would listen to just rail on and on and on for 2 hours or 90 minutes and I would actually enjoy it. That's definitely something to behold, as is Mark's heightened sense of self-awareness and his utter demolition of the fourth wall over the past few years to the point where I just don't even anticipate it to exist anymore on a record that he makes. But for Mark, tearing down the separator between the artist and the audience is not enough, because on This Is My Dinner, I would say he's tearing down a fifth wall as well, and transcending the actual medium that he's making art within. I mean, I don't think anybody would categorize this album as anything else other than music, but I don't really enjoy this album the same way that I typically enjoy music, because with Mark's tangents on this record getting more rambly, less focused, less edited, and with the instrumentals growing even more inoffensive and repetitive, I don't really feel like I'm focusing on or enjoying the musical aspects of this album at all. I'm more or less just reading into the ongoing story of Mark Kozelek, which I've been pretty deeply locked into for almost half a decade now. Because honestly, listening to this album, it feels more like listening to a podcast, or a totally raw, unending YouTube vlog where the host just divulges any and all personal information that they possibly can. And I don't think I'm alone in observing Mark crossing over this imaginary line, because there's literally a point on this album in Mark's lyrics, if you could even call them lyrics, because he's barely even singing. Again, he's really just more rambling his way through these instrumentals. There's literally a point where he admits that what he's performing doesn't really make for much of a song. And honestly, I just took that as a statement of fact, as opposed to him trying to beat his detractors to a criticism. Because there are a lot of things I like about this record, but a lot of the time they just revolve around whatever story Mark is telling on a track, or whatever story within a story he's telling, or whatever story within a story within a story he's telling. Whether it be experiences he's having while out on the road in Scandinavia, which narratively makes for a great deal of this record, whether Mark is talking about the setting, the scenery, the towns, the people he's meeting, his moodiness, his jet lag. A lot of this really ties the album together, especially in the first half. Then we have some moments where he's shouting out some of his favorite, but also his least favorite music, whether it be Queen or the Eagles. Also a foreign boxer he admires, disgraced by his fellow countrymen for not matching up to Mike Tyson in a fight. There's a pretty memorable point on the album where Mark is singing about a little girl dealing with like some kind of cough or breathing issue, and he actually goes on to mimic the sound of this problem in the song. Really something I wanted to hear in 2018. There's also an interesting story on this record about Mark burning an old apartment down by leaving some candles out while he left the place. Also, Mark not being able to finish a song that he was typing out on his computer on an airplane because the stewardess told him to close his laptop, after which the refrain that he goes into refers to the song itself being unfinished on the plane that he is flying on at that very moment. I could go on, but again, little of what I like about this record and what I remember from it as well has little to do with the music on it. And when the music does stand out, it's not always for the best reasons. Like on the song Linda Blair, the blippy, stuttering guitar lines that plink and plunk their way through the track, at least the first leg of it anyway, are tedious and annoying. There's also a really funny 1-minute cover of the Partridge Family theme song on this album too, which plays into the previous track on the album, which is part David Cassidy tribute, but also part long-winded introduction to the cover, which Mark refers to at least a few times on the song, saying, "Hey, we're gonna play this cover." Also in which Mark highly recommends the David Cassidy autobiography, Come On Get Happy. But Mark doesn't really get too bogged down in the details of David Cassidy's story, as it seems like he really does want his audience to buy and read the book. Which I guess in a way just intensifies my feelings about this album. Just vibing a lot more like a podcast than a record. Because literally throughout this thing, I'm getting book recommendations, hotel recommendations, some music reviews, a little bit of a travel log, some documentary and storytelling, and a sense of existential dread that rivals that of Mark Maron when Mark starts singing about how boner pill commercials are suddenly appealing to him because his pee-pee don't get as hard no more. This thing is a unique and also a truly strange listen, but also somewhat disappointing, because while I do enjoy Mark's lyrics, I enjoy his storytelling, I enjoy his personality, but I also enjoy the man's musical talents, which I don't think are adequately showcased on this record. As a lot of the time, it feels like the music's only directive on this record is to be as basic and as loosely structured and as out of the way as possible to just kind of let Mark sit on top of it and rail away. I mean, there are some cute musical moments on the record, like some of the group refrains on the bluesy "This Is Not Possible," some of the noisy guitar freakouts on the track Chapter 87 of He, also the elongated vocal notes on the cut Rock and Roll Singer, which is hands down my favorite track on this entire record. The tried and true country chords of the David Cassidy track are also kind of quaint, but all of this is barely enough to drive me back to this album, honestly. So while I respect Mark Kozelek expanding his storytelling abilities on this album and completely break down the rules of what it means to write, record, and sell a song, musically speaking, I think this album is also one of his less interesting in recent memory. I'm feeling a decent to a strong 6 on this thing. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like, please subscribe, and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Sun Kill Moon, This Is My Dinner, forever.